Hi, welcome to Haven. This is a podcast that's a safe space for curiosity and conversation. I'm your host, Haven, and today I'm curious about how to brainwash your kids into being best friends. How to brainwash your kids into being best friends. And I really do think you have to brainwash them because I don't know how natural it quite is just right out of the gate. So sibling rivalry, I feel like it's really, really normalized in the sense where it's just the assumption that you're going to fight with your siblings, especially when you're young. And then typically the response is, oh, you'll be best friends when you're older, or like, just wait till you grow up. And that's kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel, or like the hope is maybe in adulthood, you'll finally appreciate each other. And it's almost kind of assumed that like you're just not going to get that in childhood. Like it's almost kind of not even something we strive for, really. We just kind of hope at the end of the day that they come back together. And I kind of wonder, why is that? And speaking for myself, my siblings and I fought a ton growing up. I'll kind of break down a little bit more of the specifics. But before I even talk about my sibling dynamic, I actually think it's really important to then first look at your parents' sibling dynamics. Like, what were their expectations? What were they responding to? What was their perception of what siblings are based on birth order and personalities and their parents? And so I want to talk first. I'll talk about my dad. So my dad is like 13 years older than my mom. He was born in 1950, which is like an entirely different world. Like he literally was excited about a color TV, and he's the oldest of 4 siblings, and he is so responsible. Like you can count on him for anything. Like he's the guy if you need to be dropped off at the airport. He's the guy who had 7 toilet paper packages in the garage in case you ran out of toilet paper, like just on top of it. And his sibling immediately under him was my Aunt Sherilyn. And they were funny because they, right now, again, as adults are best friends, they call each other and gab all the time. But like growing up, my dad was like, I would petition for 2 years to stay up like 20 minutes later for bedtime. He's like, and I would work so hard and I'd be so diligent. I had to prove so many things. He was like, and then literally a month later, Sherilyn would ask and they would give her a later bedtime. So my dad was like, all about fairness, like very, very fair, because there's a bit of an injustice for him growing up. And then his younger sister was born with a disability. My Aunt Kathy, she did not, when in delivery, she didn't get enough oxygen. And so the actual term is retardation. That was what her diagnosis was at that time, is just mental retardation. And so he grew up with this, the old term of saying that is special needs. Now it's a disability, but he grew up being involved with that. And that's a big thing. My Aunt Kathy lived with my grandparents and for the majority of her life, and it affected their lives of what that looks like, of him also being responsible, being a caretaker. And then his youngest sibling, Tim, Uncle Tim, he calls my brother's name is Tucker. And when my dad's mad, he's been known to call my brother Tim. He's just a little knee jerk of like Tim, because he was used to that, where they have a pretty big age gap. And so my dad was really responsible for Uncle Tim. And so there was these stories they talk about how my dad's, one of his jobs was to put Uncle Tim to bed. And Uncle Tim loved to pester him and make this job really hard for him. So my dad had to sit there and, rub his back and wait for him to go to sleep. And then when he thought he was asleep, he would just go to the door kind of really close. And then right when he was about to open the door, he said that Uncle Tim would go, I'm awake, and make him go back and rub his back. So I think my dad is coming this of siblings are a lot of responsibility, and it's unjust and not fair. And so we're really just going to like make sure that there is equal distribution here. Where my mom, so she has 2 brothers, one brother that shares the same dad, and one that, dad and mom, and then one that only shares the same mom, so half brother. So my Uncle Cody and her, they grew up in Texas, but my mom moved to Los Angeles when she was 12, like essentially on her own to do acting. And so it kind of split up the family. So they had an age gap, but then also they didn't grow up physically in the same home. And then my Uncle Justice was born when she was 20 years old and my grandmother was 40. So it was almost like mother, like not only just like a big sister, but like their age gap was huge. And so it really wasn't the same typical sibling. So my mom's point of view of siblings was, oh my gosh, you're so lucky. You're so lucky to have siblings. Like, you're so lucky to have friends. And I would love a sister, especially. Like, I can't believe you have a sister. And so I think she really underestimated the difficulty of what it's like to have siblings, because she just kept thinking, oh, I can't believe that you get to grow up next to each other and you're so lucky to have best friends. So that's what we heard a lot, which on one hand, true. We are very lucky to have siblings. It's also a lot of difficulty and challenges that come along with that. So her perspective of it. So we have two parents here. One who's like, things are going to be fair. We're going to follow like specific timelines. And then one who's like, you're just so lucky to have each other. I'm kind of shocked that you're fighting. I don't really get why you would fight. Like, you have a built-in playmate. Insert 3 kids in 3 years. One of which being an oldest boy diagnosed with ADHD. The second born being kind of perfect and no real problems. And then the third one being a sweetheart who's very sensitive. My guest is here laughing off camera because she's known us since childhood, but I'm not. This is my podcast, so you're not going to say anything about that middle child. She's great. And then the youngest is very sensitive and very introspective and caring and thoughtful. And we had so much conflict growing up. So here I am, fast forward. I'm the middle child I alluded to. And I have 2 children now. And I'm like, okay, what do I want to glean that worked? What do I want to adjust that doesn't work? And then my guest. So the title of this episode is How to Brainwash Your Kids to Being Best Friend. It's my aunt. And I remember she has 3 kids and they're all kind of older now. And I was like, they love each other. How do they enjoy each other? Like, they're normal kids. I was like, but what is that? And she literally told me once, oh, like, yeah, I brainwashed them into being best friends. And I was like, tell me more. And so I was like, this episode needs to be public. It's such great insight. It's such important insight. It takes a ton of intention. I think the natural curve is going to be sibling rivalry and conflict. So how do you dive into the conflict and have intentionality with siblings? So I would like to welcome Auntie Maria.
So glad to be here. And I'm over here just grinning from ear to ear because I'm so proud of you and you are so wonderful, so perfect. But I'm just honored to get to be here. And I know that the title already is probably going to be controversial. Like, you should not brainwash anybody. And I get it. And I think it's kind of funny that you named this episode that, because I remember telling you that years ago. You're like, how do your kids love each other so much? And I flippantly said like, well, I brainwashed them. So I didn't really brainwash them, but there was tons and still is to this day. My kids are now 14, 10, and 9. And there is still so much intention. And you can't underestimate the formative years. And so I'm excited to dive into that.
Yeah, the real thing we're talking about is intentionality, but that doesn't sell, baby. No one's going to click on that title.
Brainwash your children.
Wash. But first, so flashback, you met us as children. You met me, when I was 13, 14?
Maybe even 12, 13-ish?
Something around there.
I was around like first boyfriend kind of time.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So you've been the longevity. And before we started this, she was like, oh, yeah, I witnessed some of those fights.
Oh, yeah. I remember witnessing your first fight with your siblings because you guys are still all absolutely lovely, wonderful people to be around. I felt like we had an instant connection. Mm-hmm. We'd be hanging out in Texas. You'd come lay on my lap. I'd be playing with your hair. Like everyone was so warm and welcoming. And here I am dating your uncle. And all of a sudden, I don't think we were married yet. I think maybe we were engaged and we're hanging out at your grandmother's house, my mother-in-law's house. And all of a sudden it was like World War II. And I was like, take cover. Take cover. I don't know what's going on. And it was just so like vastly different than 99% of your life. But when you guys fought, I had never experienced in my life any sibling fights like it, where other people that weren't in the immediate home were exposed to it.
Oh, we blew through babysitters.
Oh.
When I tell you they did not want to come back, it was after one of us had a fight with our sibling.
I kind of believe it.
Yeah. Oh, you saw it.
You would never imagine it though. So yeah, because
people who knew us back then are like, yeah, but we can. Our old friends can. I remember one time, like, someone was driving my sister and I somewhere, and I wanted to sit in the front, and I wanted that, and Clancy wanted it too, and sometimes she'd dig her heels in. We stood outside of this individual's car, fighting for like 10 minutes about the front seat. And I remember even internally being like, I should probably be embarrassed about this.
Like, I'm going to stand my ground.
Yeah, I was like so stubborn about it, but like there was something about like this kind of intensity with sibling rivalry and like the fighting there. And so what I'm looking at is like, okay, what causes that? Like what really genuinely causes that? And there's this psychologist I love, Dr. Becky, and she did this this newsletter. It was like, why are siblings so competitive with each other? I was like, immediately read. Like, what was my problem? Please diagnose me. And she was talking about a lot of it can come from that children by nature see any other thing that's a tap on their caretaker's energy, attention, time as a threat.
Yeah.
So inherently other children are a threat because it's, oh my gosh, this is my life source and you're depleting that and it's going to take away from me. And so it's this weird biological thing. So I thought that was so fascinating of like the first aspect of talking about that is the attachment to a parent.
That's so interesting that you mentioned that because I remember intentionally doing that with Logan, my oldest, as I was pregnant with Carter. I remember going like, hey, your best friend, baby brother is going to come into this world. And let's just imagine he was 4. Let's just imagine that he was here now. And what if he was hungry and only mommy can feed him? And so imagine we're here and brother's here and you're sitting there and you want to be on mommy's lap, but mommy has to feed the baby. That doesn't mean mommy doesn't love you. And so like often I would begin to paint these pictures of like how he wasn't going to get me fully, but this new sibling was going to be his best friend and a gift in his life. And even though he wasn't going to get all of mommy all the time, that didn't mean that mommy loved him any less. And so that's kind of what you're saying in that study is like the main caregiver, all of a sudden, this little new thing is a threat to their livelihood and their love and the attention. And so I just began to paint a picture, even if he didn't fully understand it, over and over again, like, hey, life is going to look different, but that doesn't determine my love or my, affection for you.
I feel like that messaging is so important because typically it's just when the baby's here of like, look, it's your new baby. Don't you love them? Don't you love being a big brother? And he's thinking like, man, it's really loud and my mom's holding it a lot and I'm not sure. And so I heard the analogy of it was basically like if Aaron came home and was like, hey, in a couple months, like you're going to get a little wife and I'm going to get a little wife and it's going to be awesome. And she's going to share your room. And any of those clothes that you don't need, she's going to be wearing them. The ones that you can't wear anymore that you loved, she'll be wearing them. Won't that be great? I think obviously that's a different scenario, but I would be not pleased about it. But when you're only messaging like the positives and not like the real life scenarios or preparing, that was another thing that I learned of there. Of a lot of it is the acknowledgement, where I think maybe this is where my mom didn't realize is even kind of pulling Logan or pulling my daughter Isley aside and saying, hey, it's really hard sometimes when the baby needs me and you want me too, isn't it? Like it's hard being a big sister sometimes, and acknowledging that of it's difficult. It's not always great. And it's not always like, well, what should we do? The problem there. It's then, so maybe what if we had some one-on-one time, just coloring, just you and I'm going to finish this. And then it's also not blaming the baby of, oh, I can't do this because this person needs me. I can't do this. And then they resent the baby. It's trying to do this intentional focus and saying, here's how we can troubleshoot this, but also you still have me. It's a different capacity. And I think that is it's really hard to do like in the moment because you're just hanging on, trying to survive.
You're just trying to survive. Absolutely.
Yeah. But what was it like? So you and your sister had an age gap. How were you parented with that age gap?
You know, when you were talking about your mom and dad, I began to think of my mom. And culturally, it was a little bit different. I'm Mexican. And so there's, a little bit of a different spin in just culture. And so my mom was also the middle child. She had an older brother and a younger brother. But because she was the female in the family, she had a lot more of the household or all of the household responsibilities, and basically felt and was kind of parented to believe that she existed to serve her brothers.
Whoa.
And so she would have to clean their rooms. She would have to make their beds. And so I think in some ways, she just wanted things to be fair. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firstborn. So when you were talking about your dad, I feel that. I can empathize a little bit of the responsibility and the fairness that is just innate in, I think, inside of a firstborn. And so I think what I was kind of conditioned was fairness. Now, mind you, the 7-year gap, it's hard to be fair when you're in such different life stages. Like I got married, my sister was in high school. Mm-hmm. So there was, there were gaps, but I think maybe something that ran through like my lens was fairness. And so when I first had the kids, we're going to get 3 of everything the same. We're going to order them the same things. Everyone is going to be, it's just going to be fair. Mm-hmm. And I quickly realized not only that wasn't helping them, it wasn't setting them up for success in the world, because nothing is fair in life. And so to try to make home fair was such a disadvantage to their upbringing and missing the opportunity that I think is so important when getting your kids to love each other, and that's celebrating one another's victories. Mm-hmm. And so if everything's fair and there's never conflict, you really miss that opportunity to say like, hey, maybe you're disappointed right now and we're with you and I understand that and this sucks. We're going to sit in this moment. But then we love each other so much that when your brother's winning, we want to celebrate that. Mm-hmm. Life isn't fair. So I think that was one thing that was super important that I had to learn and kind of grow out of, because I'm like, oh, it's all about being right and fair, mm-hmm. to really realizing that like nothing is fair in life. And so if I teach my kids that things need to be fair, it is the worst disadvantage, because life is anything but fair and there's many disappointments in life. So how do you handle that? And then how do you celebrate other people, especially your siblings, walking through life?
Yeah, because like on the surface, it seems like really thoughtful and trying to like not have anything be too out of balance. But then also from the child's perspective, then they're thinking, oh, they got a toy, then I get a toy. Or they had a special day with someone, when's mine? And then it becomes this, I deserve in life is based on what other people around me are getting or not getting. And then it's this strange viewpoint of just itemizing and competition.
Correct. I think that's actually what can prod on, is that a thing?
Yeah.
Prod.
Little horse.
Little heart. Prodding towards the rivalry.
Uh-huh.
It actually helps that grow, as opposed to like, hey, you know what? You didn't do well. Your sibling did. We're going to celebrate them. But there's going to be times that you do something really well and they're going to celebrate you.
Yeah. And it's the strange thing. So it's my son's 3rd birthday today.
I know. Happy birthday, Echo.
Happy birthday. You brought him his 2 greatest things in life, monster trucks and dinosaurs. Literally. And it's interesting because it's all about Echo today.
Yeah.
And, seeing that through the lens of his older sister I can feel it being challenging for her, because she keeps asking, well, when's my birthday? And, all of these. And so it's interesting we went through the guest list of who he's coming for his birthday. And she did bring up a valid point. She was like, who am I going to play with? And I was like, well, there's a lot of friends there. And she started crying. I was like, well, we could invite one friend for you to have to play with at his party. Like that felt like a compromise. But then also when people are bringing gifts, he's only opening these gifts. Like we're not doing these sub gifts. Even my mom was like, should I bring something for, I was like very grandparent. And I was like, no, I don't. I want her to have the ability to know just because someone celebrated, that doesn't mean that I need to be placated.
Right.
And it's tough though, because you see it and you see the,
Well, and that's our natural loving, like intuition.
Mhm.
Like we don't want to leave out the other kid,
mm-mm.
but it's actually, I think, so much healthier to be like, you know what, today is about your sibling
Mhm.
and we want to celebrate their life and how awesome they are and the gift they are to our family. So today isn't about you. And that it doesn't sit well, especially as a mom.
It's
you
hard
know?
to see them struggle.
It is.
Even though it's greater for their future. This is a lesson that I need her to learn at the safety as a 5-year-old.
Absolutely.
And not at the embarrassment of 25.
100%. And every time my kids struggle, trust me, it sucks. It's hard to watch your kid be in pain or have a difficult moment. But every time it happens, I'm so grateful because I'm there to help guide their emotions, to help them grow. And so as much as it hurts as a parent to see your kid walk through anything hard, I'm really, the older I get, seeing it as such a gift because it's setting them up for success in their adulthood. And so many times I think we didn't have that because we grew up, let me speak for me. I'm way older than you. I grew up in a generation that said like, well, do it because I said so. Or you want to cry, I'm going to give you something to cry about. There was no explanation or lesson in things. It was just like, deal with it or, kind of shove it. And I'm just so grateful that I have the opportunity for them to go through hard things because they're going to be a stronger, healthier human being that can stand on their own 2 feet without flailing, going like, wait, I haven't experienced this before.
Totally. So you started saying that when you were pregnant with your second is when you started those conversations. What did it look like kind of at each phase of their development? And then when you introduced a third, like I'm thinking practical. I'm literally thinking, give me a playbook. I'd like a script or just someone listening of like, I need the nitty gritty. What did you do?
Yeah. So I think the intentionality in fake scenarios that could be real scenarios to help them see that things were going to shift before they did. So that was number one. Number two, you kind of touched on it when you said giving intentional alone time to your kids. I think that's so important because then they don't feel like they are fighting for your attention. They know they're going to get it and you can tailor it to them however they need. So I have 3 and my last 2, brace yourself, are 10.5 months apart. I know you're thinking, what's the math on that? Let me break it down for you. It is possible. I got pregnant 8 weeks after my second with my third.
Insane.
And then she came 2 weeks early. So there's the math. But it was rough. It was really, really rough for quite some time. And so I was barely a human being. And so it was, you would think harder, but because my second one's love language is time, I would literally just take him to the grocery store with me, just me and him. And he thought it was like going to Disneyland. I remember him going like, Mommy, look at the chips. Like he was just so excited that he had. And so it wasn't like an extra thing I needed to do. It was just an intentional thing of like, I know that he wants time with me and I don't have to go buy him anything. I don't have to go create this experience. I just need alone time with him. So I would build that into the things that I was already doing because I was tapped out with energy.
Yeah.
And so that was really important. So they didn't feel like they had to fight for mommy's attention because it was split 3 ways all the time. I just was intentional about spending what they needed with them.
What were the others' love languages?
Kendall's is definitely gifts.
I was going to say cash.
Cold she hard wants to cash. Go on a shopping spree all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I know my oldest yet. And I think they change over time. He's a teenager now. So I feel like, we're in a new stage of life with the things, but they all physical touch. They're all cuddlers. I mean, I've always been very, maybe because I'm a cuddler, even though that might not be a love language, I'm very affectionate. As I say that, one of the other practical things that could be controversial is when they do fight, I don't allow them to let that moment pass without like full reconciliation, meaning I make them hug each other until it's real.
No way. That sounds brutal.
I know. It actually like,
Hey, I'm learning from someone who has kids that like each other. So who am I to judge?
And I mean, I will say there's a lot of things I've done wrong, but I do have people that I don't know come up to me that like work at the school and say, your kids saw each other on the playground and ran from one side of the playground to the other to hug each other and fully embrace each other. I've had people that I don't know like see the love that they have for one another. And I mean, it's a lot of prayer. It's a lot of intentionality, but they really do love each other. My 2 little ones, they're Irish twins, and they will say they're my best friend. They're very close. They all get along. They fight, like they bicker, but they don't like never physical altercations. Of course, people get feelings hurt, but at the end of the day, those kids love each other. And I feel like I've tried to give them a vision for their life, saying like, hey, one day me and dad, we're not going to be here anymore. And the older I get, the more like fact that feels like one day you guys are going to have just each other. And God has gifted this awesome relationship, this awesome person to be in your life once mom and dad aren't here. And so I've just tried to give them a vision of like their purpose in each other's lives, the gift that is. And so, yes, when they fight, we will talk it through. We will hear each other's sides if they need me. And then I'm like, I could tell you're still mad. Hug your sibling. And they'll be like, I don't want to touch them. And I was like, well, I know you're still mad. So let's keep talking. Let's keep working it out. What's the heart behind? I know here's the thing that you're fighting about, but tell me about your sibling's heart. You know, like, let's believe the best in each other. And I have light bulbs going off in my own head about why I make my kids hug after a fight.
Okay.
So when my husband and I fight and we're at the end, we're at the resolution, he often will say, give me a kiss. And there has been many moments where I still don't want to kiss him because I'm not fully over it. And so that physical contact, I'm realizing in this moment, is how I know that I am at a place of resolution. And so I think, not beknownst to myself, I have kind of made this set this up for my kids because I know that if they are really over it, they're going to want to hug, and it's not going to be hard for them to do that. So anyway, I guess that's where that came from. I'm not saying you should do it, but for us, it has worked.
It makes so much sense when you put it that way, because I'm like, oh yeah, like if Aaron and I were fighting and then if he asked for a kiss, if I was actually over it, I would be ready.
Absolutely.
And willing to embrace. But if I was still upset, I would recoil.
Yeah, I'd be like, don't touch me.
Yeah, like, are you kidding me? No, like even if my words are saying okay, my body and my actions would say no, not.
So I guess that's where it came from.
Now a quick pause to hear from my sponsors.
I'm sitting here on the set of something I'm really excited to bring to you guys, which is the relational e-course called Pillow Talk. I filmed it with my husband, Aaron, and our actual marriage counselor, Dr. Jonathan Cood. And we cover a variety of different topics with this e-course. It's coming out soon, so if you want to be in the know and up to date on when it's released, go to havenpod.com. You can see the little pillow icon on there, put your email in, and we'll give you a heads up of when it's coming out.
Okay, back to the episode. Break this one down. So give me a scenario. What would they be fighting about?
Someone's feelings are hurt because oh gosh, let me think.
I know, because you're like, I don't want to give away their dirty laundry.
I know. Okay, so a practical real life scenario. Someone gets hurt because somebody's friend has said something about them and they didn't feel like their sibling protected them. So that's a little bit like of a deeper wound, like, hey, you didn't stand up for me and we stand up for each other. And I do often tell them, like, the world is a harsh place. And so inside this home, we're going to stand for each other. And even when the world's against us, we're for each other. And so I try to paint this like picture of like, this is a strong unit. And so what happens on the inside is we're for each other. We've got each other's back. We're going to love each other unconditionally because we're all flawed, but we're going to love each other through those flaws. And so one was hurt that they didn't stand up for one another and they don't love me. You know, they just begin to kind of spiral. And I was like, let's stop for a second. I hear what you're saying. And I said, but let's look at your sibling's track record. Has your sibling always loved you? Have they time and time again, maybe they've messed up a little bit, but like, would you say, yeah, you know? And so just trying to paint, to give people a benefit of the doubt. We all are going to mess up. We're all going to have a bad day in our homes, in our relationships. And so giving grace, and then also like, hey, let's look at how good they've been to you. What did they do yesterday? They thought of you, even though that maybe wasn't natural for them, and they did X, Y, and Z. I don't know if that's helpful, but really making us, it's not us against the world, but like at the end of the day, if the world's against us, we're going to be for each other.
I've seen that with the kids. No, like truly, because I've heard them stand up for one each other. Like in the scenarios of them saying like, hey, that's my sister, don't talk about her. Or like, that's my brother, I don't like that. Like they kind of get like in a great way of like a strong response, taking care of one another.
I love that you said that because they do, but I love that you've heard it. I think one thing that also has maybe helped that, which when my husband, who is a phenomenal father, originally said that, I kind of had a knee-jerk reaction to like, no, don't tell them that. But one of them was telling on the other one, came into our room and he was like, hey, don't tell on your siblings. Like you guys should be protecting one another from retribution from your parents. And so almost like, you know how kids sometimes will like try to turn their parents against each other?
Yes.
He was like, hey guys, be for each other, get each other's back. Cause one day you're going to get in trouble and you're not going to want your sibling to tell on you. So he's like, unless it's one of you dating someone behind the other's back, he was like, well, I will give you $1,000 if you tell on them. Anything else? He's like, do not tell on your siblings.
Everything else the opposite.
Like be a team together against us. You know what I mean? Like, don't put your parents against each other, but siblings against parents, you guys be a unit. And I almost, at first I was like, I don't like that. No, I want them telling us everything, but it has given them some sort of like, we're a team together that I think has actually helped them become closer.
I love that. I love them seeing each other as like the team unit. And so I've been trying to glean that with the kids because the other day I came home and Isley was like, oh, so-and-so was mean to me today. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And then Echo's there and I turned, I said, what did you do about it? And he was like, I don't know. I was like, next time, I said, you say, that's my sister, don't be mean to her. And so I was like, let's practice. And so then he was like, I said, okay, I'm this person and I'm coming and I'm being mean to Isley. What do you do? And he was eating like frozen peas and he said, I'll say, that's my sister, don't be mean to her. And I throw my peas at them. And I was like,
you're like, good job, Echo.
Yeah, like close enough, like not into the violence, but it's peas, you know? And so we just kept practicing. And I was like, so Echo, like it's your duty to stand up when someone's being unkind to Isley. And then the talking about the teams, like Aaron and I do that too, where it's like, you just want them to get in the car and it's taking forever. And like, let's make it a race instead of saying who can get to the car first. Like with them, it's, ooh, who's going to win? The kids or mommy?
Right.
And I make them a team on everything. I never, ever make it a competition of which one of you can brush your teeth the fastest. It's always them versus me of, can you brush your teeth before I get into the bathroom? Or like trying to make it where Aaron and I always have it where it's the kids are a team. We never, ever put them against. If anything, it can be kids versus mommy, kids versus daddy,
that's a good.
Or kids versus the parents.
And I think we naturally as parents, because we're such people of comparison, and not that comparison in the way that it's like, ooh, you're better than me, but like our brain works in comparison. We compare apples to oranges, and that's the way our brain figures out how to differentiate things. So I think we naturally go like, oh, who can go the fastest? Let's make this fun. When really, if you aren't careful, you're putting them up against each other all the time. And there's just that natural, hey, I'm trying to figure out who's good at this and what I'm not good at. And so it really is a detriment to put them up against each other because they're already doing that naturally to figure out their life.
How do you celebrate maybe if one kid is better at something than the other one, but they both have an interest in it? Or I'm so practical and concrete. One of the things that you guys do at family game nights is the winner cleans up the board game. Like the loser who's stuck there and sad doesn't clean up. The winner's going to clean it up.
Yes.
And like that for me was such a great little piece of like, that's how you can win honorably, but also not like push it in the loser's face.
Oh, well, you know this about
I've never
our family. Yeah. I mean, the Colemans, the 5 of us, but then our family, we're all highly competitive.
I clean up every game every time I go over there.
I am the ultimate champion of every game in our home. And so, anyway, that's just our competitive nature. But yes, that is something that we did because we're realizing like, hey, we want to help our kids like not sulk into that like I suck, and because those are the voices in all of our heads. We're not good at this, we're not good enough at that. And so even if you don't win, how do we spin this so that the person's not like feeling even worse about themselves? Because we really do want to celebrate the unique gifting in each of our kids' lives. And so your question was how?
What if one of them is better than the other one, but they both have an interest in it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think my kids are now at the age where they've figured out their own things, that's less difficult for me because one's into football, one's into soccer, one's into gymnastics, and they're all good at that one thing. But it took some time to get there. So you're probably in the stage where they're kind of, we're trying things out. And you know, because my older sibling likes it, I'm going to like it.
I'm thinking that more from my childhood when Tucker was into something and then I would want to do it.
When you guys were all in a band together?
Yes! And he was guitarist, I was drums, Clancy was bass.
Which, by the way, is the coolest thing in the world when a girl is on drums and this is your girl.
Thank you. Classic. But then like, or sports, like he'd want to do something and then I would try. And then I remember him feeling kind of thwarted. Like I want to try having my one thing. My sister comes and then, if I'm the only girl on the baseball team, she's getting more attention. If I'm a girl who plays drums, I'm getting more attention than him playing guitar. Like, I think he kind of felt like I would like my own space for something.
Yeah.
And I think me just being like, that seems interesting, probably in a way made him feel kind of claustrophobic and repelled.
Yeah. I think as a parent, I remember my oldest is a black belt. And so we're like, everyone's doing karate because it was easier. It was already hard to juggle 3 kids. So 3 different sports. I tell people the soundtrack of my life right now is dun, 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 dun. And at any moment, my life is a circus and all the balls can drop because it is so much harder to fuel the passions of 3 little individuals than to just dump them all in one. And so for, I think, parent sanity, a lot of the times we're like, we're all going to try this. And I don't think that's wrong because we only have so much energy. But the moment you see your kid begin to love something, you have to pour fuel on that fire. And trust me, that another conversation for another day. I don't like worshiping your kids is very easy, and allowing their schedules to dictate your entire life is very easy. And my kids know. And me and my husband are very on the same page about this. And we get bad looks all the time from our kids' parents, friends' parents. But they do not control our schedule or our life, which it's just easy to fall into that trap because you're like, oh, they're great at this. I want them to have as much opportunity. My middle son is very good at soccer. He's very good. And it was not until this year that we made the jump to club soccer. And I tried everything not to. I was like, I don't got the time. That's a lot of investment. I work on the weekends. And so most of his games are on Sundays. And so that also means I'm not going to be there to support him. I'm going to have to pay somebody to take him to all these games. So this is this huge investment of time and money. But I sat him down and I said, babe, like, okay, I know you love this. I want to make it possible. But mom and dad cannot be at most of your games. And I know that might make you feel like we don't support you. And when everyone else's parents are going to be there and yours aren't, the lie in your head could be that like mom and dad don't love me that much.
Mm.
This is our livelihood. This is our responsibility. There's no way for that to change.
Mm-hmm.
And so are you still okay with us not being there, us supporting you? We will take you to the practices. We will be cheering for you from afar, but like mom and dad will not be there. We will make every effort to get you there, to have someone who loves you there, but like it won't be us. And he was like, yes. But our life, I'm not going to change my job so my kid can go pursue soccer. I just feel like I'm going to do the things that I need to do as a parent to provide, and we'll work it out. But there are so many parents that like will make a sacrifice. Or my oldest son has football on Thursdays, and me and my husband work Thursday nights. And so I've had multiple parents go like, well, I've never seen your husband here, like supporting his kid. And I was like, kind of got offended. And I was like, yeah, he's at work. But then I asked Logan last night because he had an away game and we didn't go. And I was like, hey, babe, does it bother you when, you know, we're not there for a game? He's like, not at all. Because my kids know the love, the support, they feel it in different ways. But I think that if you're not talking about it, if you're not intentional with conversation, they can begin to believe lies that are in their head that like mom and dad don't support them, or our kids know, oh, I want to go to this. And I'm like, you got 3 birthday parties a year you can go to. Pick 3 friends. My life is not going to revolve. I have 3 kids. There's only so many weekends in the year.
Yeah.
And like, you don't dictate my life. And there's such security, I think, that we think as parents, they're not going to have, but it actually gives them when mom and dad love each other, when mom and dad have a plan, and it doesn't revolve around them. Because then there's a false narrative there that everyone's life revolves around them and they feel like the main character of their life. And that's not anyone's reality. No one's a main character. We all like to think we're the main character, but when we begin to think that, we're like setting our life up for vast disappointment.
And it's so fascinating because even as you're sharing that of like, whether it's the soccer game or the football game, of like that one slice, it could paint a picture of like not involved. But I'm like, I see you guys. You are so involved, so intentional, so present, that I'm like, well, someone attending a football game, I don't know how involved and present they are outside that football game. Yeah, maybe they're hitting all of them, but like the intentionality of not only your time and attention, but even the things you're talking about of like how you're growing them and who they are and their character. I'm like, you know, one Thursday night is not the representation of you as a parent on that. Like, and to be able to kind of gauge or judge, just like someone showing up there doesn't really prove anything.
Right. And I mean, my husband, for example, went on this amazing trip. They went through a whole year of like this manhood journey because my son went from 13 to 14, and our culture doesn't have that. You know, there's quinceañeras and there's different cultures that have this like year of coming of age. And so he did this entire year program that he made with Logan. Yeah. And they read books together and they did all these things for a year together, and then culminated with this amazing 8-day trip, father-son adventures. And it was just so, I mean, he is so intentional with our kids. But again, like you said, nobody knows that. But Logan does. And he's secure.
See, that's the difference. Logan does. Yeah. The kids do. And so that's also like when I think about the things my mom did right, especially growing up with kids. You know, she always told us, like, I parent each of you differently because you're different kids.
Yes.
She's like, I'm not going to parent you the same. You're going to see me do something different with your siblings and with you because they're different people. And so don't try and like gauge what's going to happen or not happen with you because it's an individual thing. And also when we were about to turn 16, that was kind of our moment that she did.
Yeah.
She had like 50 people throughout my life write me a letter about what it means to kind of become a woman and grow into that. She did it with all of us when we were turning 16. She gave us this book of all the people I've looked up to, all these friends and family members, of what they saw in me and what it would look like to grow into a woman. And then we did a dinner with like some of the people that I admired. And it was kind of this moment and this coming of age mark in the ground. And it was individual for me. And then it was individual for Clancy of what they each wanted. And I think that's sometimes too, the sibling rivalry is the individualization of the child.
Yeah.
And like what is specifically about them that I can foster, that I can nurture. Like Carter, you know, a grocery store is going to do it for him. You know, like typical middle kid. We don't need much, guys. Just noticing us would be nice. Or this soccer.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
When you said that, we also, with the whole vein of intentionality, I have heard being a middle child sucks. That's kind of like common culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's hard because the oldest gets everything and the little one gets away with everything. And there you are stuck in the middle. And so my mom was a middle child. And so what I did before he was born is we said we were never going to use middle child.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to use centerborn. And
the centerborns listening unite.
Yes, centerborn. So when he would go say something like, well, I'm the middle. And I was like, actually, you're the center. You're the center of our family. You're the center of our hearts. I'm like, what's the best part of the Oreo? The center. It's the sweetest. And so we would just try to change the narrative of what like the world has said. And I mean, it worked for a long time, but then he finally like, being the middle kid sucks. And I was like, okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
What are the struggles? Why does it feel hard?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are some things that are great about that? You know? And so it's just, again, intentional language, intentional time, intentional thinking maybe ahead of what the world could tell you that like you want to change the narrative of.
I love that. I'm going to reprogram my whole family to tell them to call me centerborn.
You are the centerborn. You are the center of the family.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, when it comes to Oreos, fun fact, when I would eat Oreos, I would take the whole box, I would open them up, scrape out the center, and make it into one mega ball of cream and just eat the cream. It's so freaking good. And I have no other takeaway from that story other than it's delicious.
I think we should do that for Thanksgiving.
Yes. That's the extent of my cooking as well. It's just
Me and Haven are not the cooks on Thanksgiving.
Mm-mm.
Haven is the deemed taste tester.
Yes.
I will help clean up.
And I don't do that either. I love having children now because I'm like, a child needs me. Like, there's
and now
like,
I just put my kids to work. Go throw out the trash. Go help with the dishes.
oh, that's going to be the dream. Yeah, my kids are just still kind of like making the mess. But especially when I was breastfeeding, that was the 2 years that I breastfed, a year each child. It was the best ever. Didn't want to do anything.
Didn't
go
have to.
breastfeed.
Yeah.
Overstimulated. I got to go in a dark room alone with my baby. Like that.
We got to go take a nap together.
Literally, it's the best. But okay, when you were saying back that we protect our siblings, that's kind of a common theme. What other kind of lines are you saying that are like that you repeat over and over that the kids will now have as a part of their identity, is that this is what it means to be a Coleman?
So we actually don't ever try to say things like, this is the way the Colemans do things. And
that's interesting. Why?
It is, because it makes sense to go like, well, in this home, we X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, because it seems almost like an identity marker.
Right. And I want them to be proud of being a Coleman, and I want them to see the Colemans as a unit of love and security. But for our home, we just know that like as kids get older, they're going to push boundaries. There's going to be moments where they don't agree with the way me and Justice do things or how we do things, and that's okay. And so we didn't want their authority to just be in being a Coleman. Like we're the Coleman, so we don't do this. Because that just didn't feel secure. That just felt like temporal. That would be, I don't want to be a Coleman. I'm out. You know,
I just got married and changed my name. You know,
sayonara, Colemans. So in our home, we say like, well, we want to honor God with our life. And so that's where we try to have everything, like the word of God is our authority. And so we try to tie everything back into that, because that's something that like we can't argue with. Like it's not a way, it's not an opinion or a preference. Like we have said for us, like the word of God is what we stand on. And so we try to just go like, well, how do we honor God in this situation? So not that it's wrong if you say like, you know, this is the way our family does it. There are things that are particular to our family, but we really try not to put too much weight on our own way of doing things, and really like let the Bible be kind of the place where we look to for
that
our
makes
answers.
sense because you're literal pastors, so kind of on brand. My next question is, so with the kids being older now, like there are different things. It's not just like the same little kid kind of fighting.
Right.
It's like these bigger, deeper things, like you were saying, like emotional pain and that kind of stuff. How are you navigating that? Do you facilitate that conversation with them? Are they working it out together at this age?
I think they're in transition where sometimes they pull me in because they're so hurt. But I have also been in the other room hearing them work out things. And I think that's the goal, right? Like as parents, we have told our oldest, he's in high school now, that we really want to move from like a police officer to a coach in his life. And the more we see trust, the more we can kind of let go of like, this is the way you're going to do things. And these are the rules, to like, hey, how are you going to navigate this? And what is the best path forward? And what are the repercussions if you make this decision? So you want them to be able to stand on their own feet. You don't want to be the dictator in their life forever, even though I will say it's a little bit hard. I feel like I'm finding myself like just going up to my teenager and like touching him just because I feel like he's growing up and I'm losing him, even though he comes into my bedroom and I'll cuddle me and I love you, Mom. And he's not going anywhere, but I already am like grieving his adulthood a little bit. Like, oh my gosh, I got 3 summers left with him before he doesn't have to go on the family trip with us anymore or whatever the case may be. So lately he's been like, Mom, can you stop petting me? I'm like, oh, I'm petting you. I'm so sorry. You're not our dog. Like I just always tried to touch him. Yeah. But I think the goal is that you are there to help the conflict resolution, but hopefully they're going to grow to a place, and the goal would be they grow to a place where they can figure that on their own. And, sometimes I will say, do you need me for this conversation, or can you guys work this out? And sometimes they'll be like, we'll work it out. And they'll go to their room and they'll work it out. So I think the goal is that they would be able to do that alone, but I'd say probably about 60% of the time I'm still involved, especially with the little ones. The older one's kind of in a new era, but he still, can not get along with his siblings. But I am noticing, so my 14-year-old and my 9-year-old, she had a moment where she started kind of pushing him away, like, don't touch me, don't hug me, don't kiss me. And he would just try to like do it. But now I see her allowing him to like hug her. I just feel like she sees him now as like not that, it was just more sibling, like, yeah. And now she's like, oh, this is my big brother who takes care of me.
Aww,
so, yeah.
That's beautiful. Let's go back to the hugging after a fight thing.
This isn't a prescription. This is just what I did.
Questions.
Okay. Ask away.
Does it work? I'm just picturing like, okay, I'm in a really upset moment.
The fights that you picture are completely different than the fights in my home. They're bickers. They're not like screaming at each other.
Yeah, my kids aren't wild out. Like I actually
I was talking about your siblings.
I know. I'm saying like, so I'm trying to figure out, will that work for my 2? I don't think it'll work for us growing up, but like, okay, these 2, I also do wonder, I think the oldest sibling, whoever they are, sets the tone for the rest of the home.
Yeah.
And I think that my daughter Isley sets a really nurturing tone.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah, and like she really is like wanting to listen. Sometimes she'll get bothered, but usually it's Echo that's the one that's a little bit more disruptive than ever her. And then I think growing up, my brother I think he had so much energy. And I would say that as far as like you guys having both involved parents, I think it was just my mom. And so I think, like she's doing the best she can, but he doesn't really have any kind of other anchor, masculine support kind of guiding him. And so he's just kind of going over. So I think we caught that tone. And so I feel like also like Logan setting the tone. Do you feel like that's a difference maker in your home, is the fact that he is the oldest and the siblings are looking up to him?
Yes, in so many ways. I don't know if the fighting though, because I feel like honestly, he's been the best, easiest kid. I used to say like, oh, such a phenomenal mom. And then I had 2 more. And so it was him. It wasn't me. Cause I had birthed all 3 of them and they are all so different and they're all wonderful. But Logan was just an easy baby. He was an easy toddler. He was an easy child. He's been a dream of a teenager. So I just got lucky with him. But he's got that older thing that I had where I'm always kind of poking at my younger siblings. So when it comes to fighting, I feel like he's the instigator. And the 2 little ones will team up on him because he will just kind of poke at them. I think for kicks and giggles sometimes.
Interesting. Justice would do that with Tucker because Justice and Tucker are like what, only 6 or 7 years apart?
Yeah, they're more like siblings.
Yeah, so Justice would poke and sometimes hold Tucker down and fart on him.
Yeah, Logan actually is like dream kid, except when it comes to like, stop aggravating your siblings. You know, he just does it for fun.
That's so
And
fascinating.
so he does set the tone for a lot of things, and they do really look up and love their brother. So he set such a great tone, but maybe like just poking at them to like get a response is kind of his role in our family. Yeah.
I do think there's something like beautiful about having siblings. Like I would also agree with my mom saying over and over, you're so lucky to have each other.
Absolutely.
I think the counterweight could have been like, and it's hard and let's talk about it, you know, but I really do think that like there's something so unique about however many people growing up with the same experiences, the same callback, understanding it, helping you navigate when things happen later down with parents or scenarios. Like, I really do think it's a gift. And how can we not only foster with our children, but foster it as adults?
Yeah.
Like our own siblings.
You guys do a really good job with it. That's something I have admired and probably never told you, but you guys used to fight like cats and dogs, but you guys are all very close now. And I know that was probably a journey. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but like for your birthday just a couple weeks ago, you went to Disneyland with just your siblings, no spouses, no kids, and like you guys enjoy each other and you guys have real friendships that are authentic. They're not phony, and you guys, I love seeing that. So if you fought with your siblings a lot, like there's still hope.
Yeah, I would say that. Of like, I want to hear of how I can work out with kids, but I do believe the light at the end of the tunnel of like, they will be best friends as adults. Like I've seen it in our lives of, for my birthday, the only thing I wanted was to go to Disneyland with Tucker and Clancy. And I love their spouses and I love my spouse. But I was like, it's different vibes. I was like, I would love just us. I miss just us. And also I think because, we're in different stages of life. I have kids. They don't have kids. They live near each other. They all love to golf. And I was kind of feeling this like, oh my gosh, like I not left out because I don't want to golf. But in a sense of you guys have stuff in common and I miss you.
Right.
And I want that. And so it's the same. Like you were saying, like, okay, if mom and dad aren't in soccer, the narrative, what you may say is they don't love me. I could feel the narrative, what I was saying was I'm left out. They don't care as much. But I was like, that's not true. I know them. I know they love me. I know they're probably just not thinking about me in this moment. So what do I want? What is the ask? What is my ask of them there? Because I remember telling them, I said, here's the thing. You guys hang out a lot and I love that. And I'm not asking you not to hang out a lot. My ask is I want to be there too. Like I want to have some. I can't make all of it, especially if it's last minute. I don't want to do some of the stuff you do, but a lot of it I do. So my ask is, can I be a part more and keeping it on my side of the fence? Or will you guys commit to coming to Disney with me? But then I was also like, first, is there a reason? And I was like, and I really want to know, is there something about me that's not wanting to invite? Is it the kid thing? And is it just the fact that we live far away? And it really helped because they were so honest. They were like, no, we love you. They're like, it's just last minute. We live 10 minutes from each other.
And they don't have kids.
And
it's
they
a
don't
different season.
They said that. And they're like, we don't ever want to feel bad of saying like, don't bring kids. So we came up with an agreement. I was like, if ever you want to invite me to something and you don't want to say, don't bring kids, you can say, okay, it's ages 6 and up. Like we're going to this thing and it's ages 6 and up, which tells me not kids, but no harm, no foul. But it helped even having that dialogue instead of me resenting and feeling like every single time they hung out without me was a slight, which it isn't. It's really, really not. Instead, feeling the longing of, I miss you. I want you. First, is there anything I need to clean up on my side of the fence that's causing this? And if it's just time and distance and circumstance, how can I be more intentional about spending time with you because I do value you and I do want to make sure we carve enough time outside of holidays.
Yeah. That's so mature of you though. You know what I mean? And you have to be humble to want to have that conversation because it's not a comfortable conversation for a lot of people that may feel insecure about something. And so great job. Just, you know what I mean? Being able to have a somewhat awkward, somewhat vulnerable, very vulnerable.
Well, it was vulnerable because it was saying
Absolutely.
like, I want something that you guys are sharing.
Right.
And maybe there is a reason I don't know, or Is there any, you know?
And so look at maybe that situation as a parent to help siblings do that early on so that like it isn't as vulnerable later on because they've learned how to do that at a young age, you know? And so it's like, hey, how does that make you feel? How do you respond to that? Because sometimes you don't even know how to respond to vulnerability, and that can be very painful. And so in those conversations I have with my kids when they're in pain or they're vulnerable, it's like, you know, they're pointing the finger, they're getting defensive, they're hurt. And it's like, okay, we hear you. How does that make you feel? Are you listening? What did they say back? Like, I feel like I'm in marriage counseling a little bit with my kids going, hey, when somebody is vulnerable, how do you handle their like, how do you handle their heart? Because right now their heart's open to you and you're just like punching it, you know, and maybe you don't realize that you're doing that, but that's what you're doing. So I want you to appropriately respond to what they just said. And that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of intention. It takes a lot of really taking, not just going like hug and make up, because that isn't, we spend time going back and forth. Okay, now I want you to believe the best. I need you to believe the best in your sibling because maybe they did hurt you and maybe it was intentional, but like, can we forgive and get over it? And we will just spend the time. And sometimes they'll do want to, okay, we hugged. And I'm like, no, that was not authentic.
Yeah.
You know, and we're not doing this all the time.
Right.
These are just when they're bigger and they, you know, and they know, okay, mom's not going to let us go unless like we hug, like we mean it. And I was like, I want you to tell each other you love each other. And the brainwashing is, hey, God gave you to each other to have a best friend in this world. And we are going to embrace that. We are going to treat that with care and caution. And so you can fight with your friends and not resolve things, even though I don't recommend it. But in here, we are going to get to resolution. And I think it almost goes back to a principle and a promise that me and Justice made to each other the day we got married. And we said, we will not go to bed angry at each other. If we have to stay up all night to work something out and fight and scream and, you know, do all of that, like we do not want to let things fester. And I think when we don't actually get to resolution and we don't help our kids get to resolution and reconciliation, like we just allow something to fester. And that's where the rivalry comes in. That's where I'm against one another. I have to compete for mom's love. I have to compete for time and attention, when really, if we can get to a place where we love each other and can forgive each other, then we can get through anything.
And you know what I'm hearing you say so much too, of like the undertone of that is like, you can't take your kids somewhere you haven't been yourself.
100%.
And so if you're not intentionally reconciling with someone, if you're not believing the best in their character, if you're not willing to forgive, like we can't model it to our children too.
Absolutely.
Which I feel like is a really crucial piece. And I think it's why before we even look at our kids, look at ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, like what does that look like there? And it also sounds like it's just the language of like, not just parenting can be so exhausting and it can be so hard to try and do these intentional things. And it reminded me, so Echo, he turned 3 today. So I have this shared note that Aaron and I have of funny things he says and interesting things of the year. And there was one on here, it was Isley, and Isley was saying, Mommy's the love of my life. Daddy's the love of my life. Echo's the love of my life, and myself is the love of my life. And then Echo yells, no, not Echo. And Isley goes, Mom, Echo says for me not to love him. And I said, well, even if he says that, we will continue to love him. I was like, and I told Echo, I said, Echo, it's a gift for someone to choose to love you. And then he goes, and then Isley said, Echo, do you want my gift? Like, and then he says, no, I can give it to me by myself. Like, she's trying to say he's the love of my life, and it like, Echo, it's a gift for someone to choose to love you. Isley, do you want my gift? No.
Get that gift out of
here. I can give myself that gift. But it's those kind of things if they're young. But like trying to, like when it comes up, to not just displace or disregard that comment, but to talk about the intentionality of what it is for siblings too.
Yeah.
Hopefully
totally.
Echo will have better responses.
He's gonna accept that gift one day.
One day. I know he will. He'll give that gift too. Back and forth. But thank you, Maria.
Oh, my pleasure. Love you.
I loved you being on here. One, just because I've seen you for 14 years live this.
14?
Well,
with Logan being 14. I'm like, we've known each other longer than 14 years.
Yeah, no, you weren't nice to me the first go. No, I'm kidding. I've seen you in the parenthood realm. on this topic, really live it. That's why I like this podcast with guests of being like, for the most part, people I actually know. Because I can vouch for Maria. Maria's an incredible mother. She's an incredible wife. She's an incredible pastor, but she's an incredible person. And so it means a lot that you would share about this with me and my friends and my listeners and people, because I want to learn. I was talking to a young woman before they had mentored. She was like, and you told me this once. She said, don't take advice from someone where you wouldn't want the outcome of what they have in that area or who they are in that area. And I was like, it's true. There's a lot of people I could glean from, but when I look at their life, I'm like, well, do I want to be you? Like, do I want to be like you in this area? Do I want, is your life a life that I would like to have before I choose to listen to you or not? And yours is. Very much so. And so I'm honored that I get to have you at holidays. I'm honored that I get to have you if I need to call you and ask you things, but that you would take the time out of your day to come and share it with me really means a lot to me. So thank you.
My honor.
Really. Anyone else listening, Maria is a wealth of knowledge. She and her husband, Justice, host the Uncomplicated podcast. It's really fascinating. Maybe I'll be a guest one day. You never know. Justice and Maria have both been on mine. I don't know what I would talk about there because I've only listened to one episode. But I can vouch for them. They are good people. But for this podcast, you can listen on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. It's just Haven with an exclamation point. You already know this because you're already listening. But this is if you're on YouTube. I'm just sharing the different ways you can listen to it. Also on Instagram, TikTok, at Haven the Podcast. Or you can go to havenpod.com. You can sign up for my email newsletter. You can hear more about Pillow Talk, the relational e-course that my husband and I did with our marriage counselor of 13 years, Dr. Jonathan Cood. It's really exciting there. You can follow up on the details that way. Other than that, I'll see you next time.